Karua runs into Tanzanian iron wall. On the standard Lissu trial, Karua denied entry into Dar es Salaam. It is there on the front page of the Daily Nation as well. Tribulations after Uganda. Tanzania now ejects Karua. And on the front page of the People Daily, they say, Suluhu goes rogue. These are just some of the headlines. Even on Taifa Leo, Karua afurushwa Tanzania. Ni habari ambayo, to be honest, then we cannot ignore it. It's on most of the front pages today. Let me welcome my panelists this morning. Kipruto Karua, who served as Cabinet Minister for Agriculture in the Kibaki 1 administration, and before that as MP for Cherangani. Karibu sana.
Yeah, thank you.
Next to him we have Samuel Pogisio, who also served as Cabinet Minister in the Kibaki 2 administration in charge of ICT, and also as Senate Majority Leader in the 12th Parliament. Karibu.
MP Kacheliba.
MP Kacheliba before that as well.
Can't say that.
Gentlemen, karibuni sana. Now, many Kenyans may not really understand how big of a problem or why we are even seeing this on our front pages. But it raises pertinent questions about the sustainability of this dream of an East African community. And probably the reason why it is on our front pages today. Most lawyers are saying this is not what we envisioned. This should not be happening. Bwana Karua, from where you sit, how big or how much of a problem is this that we can see a Kenyan lawyer, maybe not just Martha Karua, any other Kenyan lawyer blocked from entry into any of the East African nations?
Well, it is a systemic issue, Fred, in the sense that most of the presidents in Africa are totally critical of any opposition to their mainstream thinking. I don't think it is even the question of Kenyan going to Tanzania as a lawyer. It is a question of the level of intolerance that they have about any challenge to the systems they have established. I know they have been able to emasculate opposition in Tanzania, and therefore the entry of somebody from Kenya is likely perhaps to upset their own thinking, because anything they do to somebody from outside the country, that's Tanzania, is likely to elicit a higher level of outrage, not only from here, but also from any other part of the world where justice is seen to be acceptable. I remember this is the second time Tanzanians are taking issue with the presence of Mheshimiwa Karua in Tanzania. I remember a few weeks ago, or a few months ago, one of the, actually is the vice chairman of Chama cha Mapinduzi, Mzee Stephen Wasira, was making sort of, with a bit of caution, but was almost condemning the presence of Karua in Tanzania. And I realized that not all was well. But what is coming out is that the current president of Tanzania, though we thought she was going to be softer than the late President John Pombe Magufuli, has become more intolerant to the opposition. There have been abductions, there have been disappearances of individuals in Tanzania never to be seen again, and some of them were found dead. This is a sign of a regime that is too insensitive to the wishes of the people, and they are not keen to be criticized. Yep.
Yes, yet, Bwana Pogisio, we see that Uganda is probably facing a similar issue where the main opposition leader is behind bars, but we did not see, because the same lawyer got access to Uganda and even got access to the courts there to defend, to the court-martial actually, to defend that opposition leader. Similar issues are happening in Sudan, where the first vice president is still under house arrest. So why should we be concerned when Martha Karua is denied access to Tanzania?
Fred, let me just remind you that a few weeks ago I said here that intolerance towards opposition is growing in East Africa, and East Africa is actually almost failing to fulfill its treaty for the formation of even an East African community is going to be difficult now, because the treaty allows members of the various member states free entry into the countries. Yeah. So when you hear that Martha Karua has been refused entry. First of all, that breaks the treaty, that breaks the law. But how do you even stop an East African from going to East Africa? So it's a bit difficult because South Sudan has done the same. The opposition leader now is in whatever prison, in some kind of prison. Uganda, as you can see, where Besigye is, and now Tanzania. Now the problem with Tanzania, I think we have a problem that's going to be a bit difficult to explain. It's a woman president expelling another fellow woman who is trying to express her interests in a legal system. But let's go further and understand, why do you think that Samia Suluhu, the president of Tanzania, is jittery about all this? Because she wants to get this election by all means. You know, she was just finishing a term that was not her term. And now she really wants a legitimate term for herself. And she will therefore fight shadows to get there. And the fact that Mother Karua is just going to listen to a case, she's not even representing the fellow. She's just an interested party, a human rights person going there, looks like a threat. It's a contradiction in terms. To say that an East African is being deported from East Africa doesn't make sense. Because when you deport somebody from your country to your country, that's not called deportation. And so they're breaking the law in any way, because East Africa is one unit right now. The only problem I have is why the president of East Africa, the chairman of the East Africa community, has not spoken on this matter.
All right.
And we just need to know why he hasn't. I mean, I'd like to hear President William Ruto this week, today. Let's hear what he says about Mother Karua being deported from home to home. What kind of deportation is that?
All right.
Even if you wanted to treat her very badly, you should simply say, turn back and go. But this idea of delaying, arresting, and deporting doesn't make sense. So I don't know what the panic is. Maybe within Chama Cha Mapinduzi there's a problem that she would like to show that she's a strong human being. But let me tell you, it's going to cost Samia. Someday she's going to regret that day that she tried to detain. And because you know Martha Karua, she's not going to be quiet about this. She's definitely not going to be quiet. If she managed to get Uganda, into Uganda's system, she fought and found herself now legally defending Besigye. So it's a wait and see. But I would have loved to think that we thought a lady president, a woman president in Tanzania, would probably understand the oppression, the difficulty in another woman getting through systems to that level, where she now defends the opposition leaders. She must be granted opportunity to go.
Okay.
Even a prisoner, you know, you're allowed to visit prison. I mean, you're not going to do anything, you're just going to see a prison. Anyway, I look forward to what happens next.
And for Martha Karua, of course, she has declared her interest in running for president of Kenya. For her to find herself on the front pages of all the major dailies, that must be a plus, Bonakirwa, despite the circumstances. For any politician to find yourself on the front pages of Monday newspapers.
Yeah, they say publicity of any nature is good for those who consume the news and also the people who are eliciting those headlines. But I think for her, this kind of publicity is deserving, in the sense that it's something that we must condemn as a people of East Africa. Remember, Fred, in the wisdom of the late Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, he used to demystify the borders between the different countries of East Africa. Look, for example, the Teso of Kenya, the Teso of Uganda, the Maasai of Kenya and the Maasai of Tanzania and many other communities, including the community where the Honorable Pokisho does come from. So these boundaries really is just a figment of colonial arrangement, which of course we respected because we did not want to open Pandora's box. But when you look at it, we are suffering as a continent because we are limiting our own capacity to move freely and to allow goods and services to move also freely within the continent, to the extent that the inter-Africa trade is between 17 and 18%, when we could do a lot more if we were able to allow. And if you are refusing services such as legal services to be dispensed within East Africa by a qualified senior counsel, the Honorable Mother Karua, it is a sign that we still got that rigidity. We've not moved away from the relics of colonial system that was keeping us within these boundaries for convenience of colonial arrangement, exploitation, and destruction of our own internal economy. It is a problem, and for those of us who know something about the issue of progression in terms of integration, it is a setback, to say the least, to that process of integration of East Africa community. And of course, we have expanded all the way to DRC. But even within us, Kenya and Tanzania, two countries that really, they are like Siamese twins, we are not allowing free movement of legal services from here to Tanzania, and also interaction of the people. Yeah, many of us, of course, I can declare that my formative years, I spent 10 years in Tanzania. And therefore, for me, Tanzania is my second home. And anything I hear about Tanzania, I'm very keen to know how well they are doing. And I always celebrate our brothers and sisters in Uganda. At times when they win, whether it's Kiprotich from Kenya or Kiprotich from Uganda, we jointly celebrate because we say this is the strength of East Africa. So for a head of state to be oblivious of some of these interactions and this kind of brotherhood is a sign of a declining democratic principles within the continent of Africa.
Right.
A situation that we should condemn by all terms and by all individuals who are well-meaning when it comes to issues of democracy.
Allow me to welcome onto the set Wakili Ishmael Nyaribo. Wakili Nyaribo, karibu sana. As we continue to discuss this, even as you take your seat, Bwana Pogisho, now that you're talking about the East African region, there are other problems that have been noted. One of the Kenyan representatives to the East Africa Legislative Assembly, appearing on another media station, and this is Winnie Odinga, curiously revealed that even the MPs have not been paid for a few months because there are serious financial problems in the East African community. Member states are failing to remit their contributions, and this includes Kenya and Tanzania because they usually were contributors but have slowed down payments due to dissatisfaction with other members' conduct. It's a sustainability of this dream of the East African community that is being called into question. Do you agree that probably, even as we sing in schools now, the anthem of the East African community, that we are still way far from achieving anything close to the integration we sought?
You know, Fred, we should be moving right now. We should be moving to the integration of the East African community. We should be moving there. I mean, we've done everything step by step. And so when you hear that major contributors, Kenya and Tanzania, Kenya is the highest, have not paid their dues, or they're slow in paying their dues, you'd begin to understand that we are not serious. We are not serious. Everyone who speaks about East African integration right now, you know, that means we should be like 5 years to full integration, at least 5 years. But there's nowhere. If a Ugandan right now, Uganda begins to block entry into Uganda, Tanzania begins to block entry into Tanzania, we can't be. By the way, even the thought of a parliament, I don't know how much we contribute I used to know those things when I was in Parliament. But I don't know how much we should contribute. But what Kenya contributes could actually run the affairs of the East Africa Legislative Assembly, IALA, for a few months. And if we're slow in paying, it's an indication that we are not well economically. We're not well financially as a country. If that's the only thing we are failing, that means there are many more obligations we probably will start losing or fail to pay. And that is an indicator that our financial situation is not good. We must then begin to think, where is our money going? Mm-hmm. What are we doing with our money? What has happened to us? The question of East Africa Legislative Assembly, where we send 9 members of parliament from Kenya. But you can imagine the countries around us got into all sorts of problems. Look at South Sudan, mm-hmm. Look at DRC Congo, and of course attached to that is Rwanda, because of the situation that they are in, the conflicts we're in. You have now Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania should be the founders of East Africa Community should be able to sustain the East Africa Community, because the rest are really failing in a way. Burundi is already down. So you think about it, out of whatever number we are now, there are already like 5 countries that cannot support themselves in this issue because of the situation fail. So IALA should begin to think of increasing the revenue, the contributions from Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, the original members, because they're the only ones who can begin to understand the very dream of East Africa Community. The rest actually just joined in mm-hmm. for various reasons, but the original members must not allow East Africa to die, must not allow IALA, for example, to fail. The question, however, in my view is, how many people would support, if we were to ask Kenyans, that the East Africa Legislative Assembly is of any use to us? What is their role? What are they doing for us? Ask yourself. I don't know. I've never seen what they do for us. Because even by now, how many years later, the East Africa Legislative Assembly does not seem to be understood by the ordinary Kenyan. What is their role? Okay. How do people get there? Apart from the fact that people send their daughters and sons, what is the role of the IALA for us? Okay. Yeah, I haven't had any, while the lady is complaining about not being paid, whatever it is, I need to hear more about how Mother Karua has been mistreated in Tanzania, okay. And there is no voice mm-hmm. of IALA okay. That we can hear.
Let's give Wakili an opportunity to contribute to this discussion as we come to the end of it. Of course, we're discussing what's on most of the front pages, Wakili, the issue of lawyer Martha Karua being denied access into Tanzania. Of course, she was there on the invitation of the East Africa Law Society, which is another arm that we can talk about in this region. Should we see this as failure of the East Africa Community dream, or just look at it from the legal perspective?
Yeah, I think there will be a storm. It's not the end. I think we expect better reaction from Law Society of Kenya, and we expect the East African Law Society also to make their strong statement about this. And besides, Fred, this is a product, the East African community is a product of a document, an agreement signed by the member states. And this return, because I had Mheshimiwa Pogisho saying, how can you deport a citizen from their own country? Nowadays you go to the migration, they give you, apart from if you have a diplomatic passport, they give you East African Community passport. And it is expected that I would be in Dodoma today in the morning and I go to Jinja and then come back to Nairobi by afternoon. This is the whole purpose of the document. So without repeating what they have said, I think Martha Karua has recourse in the EAC document, the agreement that makes the community to lodge a dispute. And she's never shy, you know that. She will go to the East African Court of Justice, and then they have to evaluate. But just like they said before, you know, the problem is not an order coming out of the East African Court of Justice court. The issue is, would then, you know, Suluhu honor that order? And they went on to say also, can President Museveni honor the orders that come from the EAC or even from their own home country? So I think it's a major setback for Martha Karua to be returned to the country. It's illegal, actually, because as it were, we should be given free access to institutions and people in our various countries, yes.
Right. Yes, indeed, Martha Karua on the front pages today, on the front page of Taifa Leo, Karua afurushwa Tanzania. Suluhu goes rogue, that's the People Daily, the main headline. It is also there highlighted on the front page of the Daily Nation as well as a Standard. And that's one of the biggest discussions today. I want us to move on to something else, which is on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Gachagua faces arrest. President's allies say the former deputy president has resorted to returning his passport